Have you ever had a desire to have a greater sense of closeness with God? If you would go looking for this, where would you look? Would you have a chat with the physically beautiful people? They're just so darn beautiful. Perhaps they have an extra dose of blessing in their genes. Would you seek out those with high-flying jobs? Surely their success is a reward from God. Would you become friends with someone famous? They have so many followers. They must be doing something right. Would you talk with Reverend Doctor knows a lot? They do know a lot. Or perhaps it would just be simpler to find someone with an abundance of riches. I mean, they have so much stuff. They must be blessed, right? The truth is, none of these people's circumstances is a mark of any extra closeness to God. In fact, if we try to be like the people mentioned above, we might find it even harder to feel close to God. In the life of Jesus, closeness to God is particularly revealed to be found in the deep, vulnerable spaces in life. It is here that the good news Jesus brings is proclaimed and made known. Remember this next time you're feeling broken, unwanted, or frayed. Jesus very intentionally sought to lovingly be with those hanging on the margins of society. Contemplate the people and places that society finds the least sexy and the most repulsing. This is where Christ would be today. But in fact, this is where Jesus is still found today, when the Spirit of God's love is made present to these people, Christ's friends. Will you be a bearer of such a love? Let me tell you about a time where I felt a particular intimacy with God. It was alive and present in the people around me. As a 21-year-old, I travelled over to Atlanta, Georgia. I went to live in a Christian community. It was called the Open Door Community. And its mission was to be with the most vulnerable and the most neglected of American society. For them, this meant spending an awful lot of time with the homeless and bringing God's good news to those in prison. The community would proudly wear t-shirts displaying the causes that they'd advocate for. In fact, I've been wearing one this whole time. It says, "No war. Our God is love. Our gospel is peace. Love your enemies." I brought just a few others. This one is about bringing economic justice to the poor. This one teaches us that teaching people that killing people is wrong by killing them, in fact, makes killers of us all. And this one really encapsulates the activist spirit we find in Jesus Christ. That he comes down to give us a vision of a mission to proclaim good news to the deep, vulnerable spaces of life. And in fact, we're called to do the best we can till we can't. To give you a snapshot of this community's love for vulnerable people, imagine a community of about 30 residents, many of whom had previously been homeless or in and out of the prison system. Imagine them spending much of their year talking to local stores and sourcing goods to go into rather large care packages, boxes a bit like this. Now imagine a line of people, the residents themselves, that extended down 3 flights of stairs, out a front door, through a yard, and into 2 rather large vans. I was in one of these vans, and I can tell you this was all happening while it was rather freezing. Yet the energy was electric. It was infectiously warm and full of joy. So much so that our homeless friends on the street could see what was going on, and they got caught up and inspired by this love. And they joined into it. It was a conveyor belt of love in action. It is in these moments and places that we draw near to God. We often think about God as being up here. And when we do that, we make an image of God that's rather empty. Because when we think of God as up here, it's quite an unattainable height. We're never quite right enough or perfect enough to get there. Rather, think about God as down here. This is where Christ says God is. God is in the deep, vulnerable places and spaces of life. And this image of God, it's full. Because it says that God's love is for all things. And that God's love wants to rise in all things. Go find this place, and that's where you'll find your closeness with God.